Ladies and gentlemen, this is your 30-second warning.
The list the closest comes 30 seconds before the meeting. How do you like that? Yeah, the rest.
You good? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Brockville City Council on Tuesday, September 12th. I'd like to start the meeting with the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the land on which we meet today. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Algonquin Nation. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land. Mayor Wren.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our council meeting of September the 12th. We have everyone here tonight. All members of council are present, so thank you for that. And I'll begin with just a few remarks, and I'll keep them brief because we've got a big agenda with a number of important items this evening. I'd just like to start by offering congratulations to a few organizations for various milestones and events that I've been able to be a part of in the last few days. All of these organizations, the backbone of them are volunteers, our community champions that roll up their sleeves and time again contribute to the greater good of our community. So last Thursday, we had the groundbreaking ceremony at Brockville General Hospital for the new MRI equipment. It's a first of its kind modular installation that will be happening at the hospital over the next few months. And by spring of next year, our residents will be able to receive those diagnostic services right here in our community. So I think that's certainly something to celebrate, and the fundraising has been extremely successful. We're not quite there yet, but all indications are it's going to be yet another successful multi-million-dollar fundraising campaign in our city. I'd like to congratulate the Brockville Flying Club for another very successful annual fly-in breakfast, and likely it was as successful as it was because of good coordination of our colleague, Councillor Wales. So congratulations to him. Unfortunately, the skies didn't allow for flights and helicopter tours and that sort of thing, but the eggs and bacon were great, and so was the company. So congratulations, Councillor Wales. And last night, for the first time, I was able to attend the Volunteer Recognition Awards of the local branch of St. John Ambulance. Our local branch is actually part of a very large regional organization, which encompasses Lanark, Leeds, and Grenville. Quite a number of people there. There were people receiving awards for thousands of hours of volunteer service. And someone that we all know very well, Jim Fairfield, who is extremely involved in the Margarita Corporation and Rotary. He is a Knight of the Order, which is a rarity. And he was recognized for 50 years of service to St. John Ambulance. So it was a pretty special event to be a part of. And our own Adam Parker is a great volunteer of St. John Ambulance. So congratulations to all of them. Just two last brief things. At our last meeting, we received our financial statements for 2022. And you'll remember that there was a deficit spoken about in the community partners section. And one item of those deficits was in the neighborhood of $300,000 with joint services. And that was because of an adjustment that had to be made for WSIB costs related to the paramedic service. Over the past year or so, maybe a year and a bit, the county's been appealing to the Ministry of Health to assist us with that, because that amount, that cost came up after the numbers were inserted for the 2023 allocation. In any case, it took a long time, but the Ministry of Health has agreed to offset that cost to some extent. So the city of Brockville will be receiving back upwards of $200,000 for that expense, which was going to cost us around $300,000, and that'll go to the bottom line surplus that the city was able to generate for 2022 and help out our fiscal policy reserve. So staff will report back to us with all the exact final figures when it's all sorted out, but that was a little good news at Joint Services last week that I wanted to make sure you're aware of. And lastly, our second of the year, our treasure hunt day is set for this Saturday, September the 16th. Anything in your house that you don't eat and you think somebody else could, put it out at your curb Saturday morning, take it away Sunday night. I was so happy with the spring one because I had this old office chair in my garage. I'd put it out on 4 treasure hunt days, and finally the last one, somebody took it. So anyway, keep that in mind for Saturday, the 16th. Yeah, I kept thinking the Dearies would want it, but it went on forever. All right, that concludes remarks. I just ask if there's any disclosure of interest in the nature thereof. And seeing none, we'll move to the adoption of council minutes. If I could ask Councillor Fullerton to put that on the floor, please. And you'd be able to read from the screen. Yes.
Yes, your worship, I would move that the minutes of the council meeting of August 29th, 2023 be adopted and circulated as read.
Thank you. Any questions, errors, or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We have a few items of correspondence, so we'll do them one at a time. Councillor Wills, would you mind taking the first item?
Absolutely, your worship. It's a British Home Child Day, British Home Children Advocacy and Research Association. The Council of the Corporation of the City of Brockville do hereby proclaim September 28th, 2023 as British Home Children Day in the City of Brockville.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, by show of hands, all in favor? That's carried. I'm going around the room, but I'm going to purposely skip over Councillor Calavas for the next one and come back to him. And Councillor Laverne, would you put the second item on the floor, please?
Certainement, Monsieur le Maire. Franco-Ontarian Day, Académie Catholique Ange Gabriel, that Council of the Corporation of the City of Brockville do hereby proclaim Monday, September 25th, 2023 as Franco-Ontarian Day in the City of Brockville, and that the Franco-Ontarian flag be flown at Tollenel Bay September 25th to October 2nd, 2023.
Thank you so much. Questions or comments?
I will be there.
Wonderful. All in favor? That is carried. Councillor Calavas. Oh, well, yeah. I'm sure you wanted to be a cadet one day.
It's moved that Council of the Corporation of the City of Brockville do hereby proclaim Saturday, October 7th to October 13th as Ontario Cadet Week, and that the Ontario Cadet flag be flown at Tunnel Bay October 2nd to October 10th, 2023.
Thank you. That's fairly straightforward. All in favor? That is carried. And Councillor Jerry, could you do the last one, please, the appointments?
Thank you, Mayor N. That council authorize the appointment of Bridget Pronovost and David White to the Arena Advisory Board, terms to expire November 14th, 2026, and that council authorize the appointment of Guy David to the Brockville Airport Commission, terms to expire November 14th, 2026, and that the necessary bylaw be enacted.
I just want to comment how grateful we are for the amount of interest that there were, especially in the Arena Advisory Board. So we thank all of those that indicated their willingness to serve. We only have 2 positions at the moment, but I'm sure there'll be other needs on the Arena file for volunteerism as we move further down the road of our project. So we thank everybody for their interest. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We have some very special guests with us this evening. My mayoral colleague from the township of Rideau Lakes, Mayor Ari Hugenboom is here to speak to us about the Mapleview Landings redevelopment project. The mayor is making the rounds to all the municipalities in Leeds and Grenville. I hear that we're number 11 of 13 presentations, so I hear he's got it down really good now. And over to you, Your Worship. Thank you for being with us.
And thank you, Mayor Wren, members of council, members of staff, public, either watching online or in the audience here. And thank you for the opportunity to be a delegation. As I said, I only have 2 left, so I've got this down pretty much pat. Okay. Anyway, let me go through it. The slides that you have, I know you have them, but I'll try to highlight some of the things on each of the slides. So, of course, the Mapleview Lodge goes back to the 1800s when it was built originally as a house of industry. Major establishment of the lodge took place in 1972, and in 2004 they had a major redevelopment. Today we have 60 residents there, and they're served by 125 employees, and they're delivering 24-hour holistic care. And of course, it's owned and operated fully by the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, unlike St. Lawrence Lodge, which is jointly operated by the 3 separated municipalities and the United Counties. The redevelopment project background: in 2022, the long-term care redevelopment project was announced. We were planning to build a 192-bed home that will accommodate the 60 residents that we currently have at Mapleview Lodge. It's an $80 million plus project. It's the largest capital project ever taken on by the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. And of course, the province contributes a portion of that over the next 25 years. And county taxpayers are responsible for all construction costs beyond the committed provincial grants. And it was an interesting debate and discussion when we decided to move forward. It was not unanimous at County Council, but I think the majority felt that it was so important that we have these kinds of facilities going forward. In July of 2022, the tender was awarded to McDonald Brothers Construction. Construction is certainly underway. We're hoping that we finish this by the spring of 2025 and that we can move in our first residents in the summer of 2025. The next slide shows you the building in the foreground is the existing Mapleview Lodge. The building in the background is the one that's currently under construction. And the existing building will be repurposed for other uses. That is still to be finalized by the United Counties. But we expect that it will be providing some sort of accommodation, whether it's sort of a campus style where people who don't quite yet need full long-term care can go in, be self-sufficient for a period of time, and then move across the parking lot into our long-term care home. It will also possibly provide housing for some of the staff. If the staff are coming from any distance in the wintertime, for example, they may want to come in, do 4 or 5 shifts and stay overnight in some of these units. It's called the George Tackeberry Family Home. And we do want to extend a sincere thanks to the Tackeberry family, who have donated $400,000 for the naming rights for the new building. Construction, as you can see, is underway. There's some progress photos there. If you're driving by the site, you'll see a lot of activity. There's probably 50 people working on site on a daily basis. And we're roughly 30% complete, and we're on time and on budget. I always like to say that to municipal councils. Well, did you know the baby boomer demographic in Leeds and Grenville is much higher than in other regions of Canada? I can speak for my own township. We're 25% higher than the provincial and the national average for the number of seniors. So we're going to need these beds. We're going to need these beds, and we're going to need more going forward. So we're hoping that everyone in the county will be part of that solution in helping us build this facility. I do want to stress that the funding raising campaign that we're doing is not for the capital costs or the operational costs. It is strictly a fund to create a fund so that we can fund all those little extras that aren't part of what would normally be provided to our seniors in their last few years of their life here. So it's going to cover quality of care amenities. Of course, for those that might be listening in, there's 100% tax receipts available for any gifts that we might receive. And we know that this is going to be a first-class facility. We are committed to ongoing affordable quality of care and service to the residents. We are recruiting the best staff and offering continuous improvement through development and training. We're, of course, encouraging inclusiveness, diversity, and tolerance, fairness, empathy, kindness, respect, sympathy, compassion, and encouragement and acceptance. We offer a very high staff to resident ratio. And the next slide will show you the fundraising committee, which includes 4 former wardens. Our vice chair is the CEO of Northern Cable. And of course, we have Mr. Kevin Tackeberry from the Tackeberry family. And I do have Leslie Todd with me, who is one of our support helpers. And Kathy Mew is another one who's helping us with marketing. And then I'm not sure what my role on this is, but I think it's because I started this whole thing. They put me on the committee. So we sat down initially and said, what kind of a goal should we have? And we didn't want it too low. We didn't want it too high. We wanted to be attainable. We came up with $3 million, and we think that we can achieve that. I did check, and many people don't realize that 30%, a little bit more than 30% of our residents in the existing facility are from the city of Brockville. And that's great, because we cannot sort of, as a county home, we cannot dictate where people would come from for this facility. That is done by the provincial government based on the highest need. Okay. So the next few slides are just simply some pictures of the community room, the private and semi-private rooms that we're building, and illustrations of the cafe, the chapel, and the gathering place. So the other thing that we did, once we set the $3 million target, we said, okay, people will want something. They'll want to put their name up on something here. So can we have some naming rights? And so we established the facility naming rights, for example, and our target amount was 300,000, while the Tackaberry family stepped up and gave us 400,000. We have secure gardens. We have neighborhoods, 6 neighborhoods at $100,000 each, for example. 2 of those neighborhoods have been secured with naming rights. So there's still 4 available. There's dining rooms, $30,000 each. I'm proud to say that our own Rideau Lakes Township is going to be naming one of the dining rooms. So we're one of the 2, and the math there is a little bit off. It should be 4 that are still available. We're not building 7 dining rooms. Next slide. And of course, then the list goes on, and community rooms, pedestrian walkways, living rooms, even the resident rooms. If some individual wants to make a $5,000 donation, we'll put their name outside one of the residents' rooms as a recognition for their very kind donation. So as I've been going around, some of the municipalities have stepped up and they've asked for securing a dining balcony or a water fountain or whatever the case might be. So this is an opportunity for the city of Brockville, if you decide to make a contribution, that you could pick one of those items and have that recognition. I do also want to talk about events such as bonspiels, golf tournaments, barbecues, bingos. We're hoping to raise $200,000 through those. And that would be through local service clubs and church groups and things of that nature. We're having some of these folks already stepping up, and we're very pleased with that. Of course, we have something called the Maple Tree of Giving that's going to happen at the front entrance. So there's different colored leaves that will go on depending on the size of the donation. So I just happen to have one with my name on it. So the company name or an individual name can go on that. And it's based on the donation so that we recognize our donors. Naming rights for individual rooms, again, $5,000 for a room, $15,000 for a living room, $15,000 for a sunroom, a dining balcony, $10,000, a dining room, $30,000, or the gift can be used for any of the additional amenities from different categories. So technology tote, for example, we have people coming into these facilities that really don't have much in the way of income or assets, and maybe they can't afford a TV. So we would use these funds, for example, to provide a TV or an internet connection or something of that nature that's not normally provided because maybe they don't have a family member that's willing to step up. So I think these things are important. Decorations. One of the things that I really like is the fact that we're putting in the tracking for lifts in every room, but we're not buying lifts for every room. We're buying a couple of lifts per floor, which means the staff have to go from room to room when a person has to go to a meal if they have trouble getting in and out of bed and get lifted out. So if we provide more of these lifts, it makes it easier for the staff and makes it more convenient so that the residents can actually go to their meal at the preferred time. So there's some different options there. So what have we targeted? One of the important things that I said when we started this was we have to be reasonable in our ask, okay? So we've decided that $1 per resident is what we would ask for based on your population for a 3-year commitment. So we're hoping that you'd consider $66,000 as a contribution to this particular fundraising. And of course, there's a number of different possibilities there that you could decide, oh, okay, we want to do the pedestrian walkway, a dining room, and a dining balcony, okay? Or we want to do just X number of rooms. And of course, that is entirely left up to the folks. And again, the many activities can be considered, including but not limited to the list that's there. I'll use an example. This summer, I had 2 yard sales. Okay, 100% of the proceeds to this cause. I raised $1,700. It's amazing what you have in your basement or your garage that you haven't used for years, and you put it out, and suddenly, when it's for a good cause, people are willing to step up and buy those things. So, there are many ways that individuals can get involved, whether it's individual members of council or individual members of the public. And I encourage through these sessions, I encourage the public to give this some thought. So the benefits of the gift, well, it gives the residents a wonderful place to dine and socialize. It illustrates social responsibility, and there's that says township recognition. It will be city recognition publicly on the tree of recognition. Now, there is a few slides in here about something called the Pear Tree Fund. Now, that's not applicable to a municipality, but it is applicable to major donors. And I know the Brockville General Hospital has used this fund in the past. So for example, if a corporate or an individual were to step up and want to donate $100,000, we would get the 100,000. They would get a tax write-off for 90,000. Okay, through the federal government. It's a flow through shares. It's to stimulate mining, the mining industry, and it's a specific program. So I know a few of the people have already done this with us, and I know people have done it for the last Brockville General Hospital fundraising campaign as well. So it's a wonderful opportunity, but you have to donate a minimum of $35,000. Okay, so if there are donors out there that want to do that, they can in fact get a 90% tax credit. I mean, assuming you have taxable income, of course, but it's just a great opportunity for some of the larger donors to be able to give us just that much more without it impacting their bottom line. So I won't go through those individual slides because there are other better people to explain that entire thing. If that's something that somebody has an interest in, certainly contact the county or and they will get you in touch with this Pear Tree Foundation. Tree of Recognition. Of course, we appreciate every level of contribution. It all makes a difference. You know, I have kids doing lemonade stands, okay? And it's all important. It's all important because it shows social responsibility. And of course, donors that give 1,000 or more will be recognized by one of these leaves, different colors for different levels. And of course, the major gifts will form the foundation or roots of this tree. So as you're coming into the lobby, there'll be some sort of a tree there, which we will attach leaves to, and we can continue to attach leaves as people make donations in the future. So red leaves, orange leaves, yellow leaves, green leaves, and the previous donors will not be forgotten either, because we have had many previous donors from when we did our first major renovation in 2004, I believe. So next steps, not looking for an answer from the city of Brockville today or anything like that. I hope you'll give this some consideration. And what I've done with municipalities, some of them have stepped up and said, I'm going to give you the full amount this year because I know we're going to have a surplus. Others have said, I'd like to spread it out over 2 years or 3 years, and anything is fine. We're just looking for some indication of a commitment if there is going to be one, so that we can include you in our totals. We think our staff is exceptional. We've won awards with the Registered Nursing Association of Ontario for the care levels that we provide in the existing home. And we want to duplicate that in the larger, newer home as well. Our residents are the reason that you might consider donating. This is simply to make sure that as they go through the last few years of their life, they have all those extras. I can tell you that I did some research. The average age of people going into long-term care in Ontario is 86. Okay. Average stay is 18 months. So this is a final place for people to call home. And I'm quite passionate. I'm not there yet. I don't have a room reserved yet, but I'm thinking about it. So it's important that we don't give up on those folks, that we make sure that they are well looked after. We did do the campaign kickoff on May the 24th, and you see some photos there, some of the donations, and we had some additional donations. We had George Tackerberry come through with another 100,000 in memory of his mother, who was a longtime resident of Mapleview Lodge. She was over 100. She just passed away this year. Okay. So again, we are going to be approaching family members. We are going to approach past people who had relatives in this facility, and so on and so forth. The Simpsons Masonic Lodge out of Newborough just folded up their operation, and they're merging with another lodge, and they donated $100,000 to the cause. So good for them. And then we had a summer tour at Tackerberry's where he opened up his antique vehicle collection. And I think we raised over $30,000 at that event just by people paying admission to the event. It was a wonderful event. And we had, David and Ann Beatty, example, step up with 300,000. We had Burnbrae Hudson Foundation. We even had other smaller donations, all of which were important. So we're about halfway there. And I do believe that I have a commitment from all 10 municipalities that I visited. Nothing has been finalized or fully confirmed yet with some of them, but as I said, I'm not necessarily looking for any commitment today. I'm here to answer any questions about the campaign. And again, if you I think I heard the mayor say something about a surplus at the end of the year, that might be, I could use a bit of that. But I know from a municipal perspective, I'm a mayor, so I know that there are so many good causes out there. And I appreciate anyone and everyone that's able to give this some consideration. So it's the George Tackleberry Family Home. We have some testimonials there, which I won't go through. And so then I'll thank you. Leslie Todd's name is on there. She's sitting right back here. And she's the best contact person if you know someone or you want to make a personal donation, or whenever the city is ready to make a commitment, then we'd be happy to do the media release, do the photo ops, whatever we can do to publicize the fact that the folks have stepped up. So how'd I do, Mayor Wren? Was it okay? It was too long?
Just perfect as always.
All right.
Thank you so much, Mayor Hoogenboom. We really appreciate the presentation, and we would certainly want to take the opportunity to acknowledge, as you said, a great number of residents of Mapleview Lodge were residents of Brockville, and I know, and I know many members of council know how well they are cared for there, and that the families of our community greatly rely on Mapleview Lodge. Plus, we just want to thank you and acknowledge you and Mrs. Todd's come back out of retirement to help in this project. The time that you're all giving to this cause to make sure this project is successful, we want to congratulate you. And
I think I retired 12 years ago. I can't remember that far back.
Are there any questions or comments for members of council? Councillor Laverne.
Thank you so much, Your Worship. Thank you for an amazing presentation. I enjoyed it. I was like $5,000 for a room. Can we be on a waiting list if we're putting that up? I love the design, the drawing of the new building. I love that you thought out of the box for all the level of partnerships. It's really, open to everyone who can try to do a lemonade stand. And Councillor Derry, I guess you're not going to get any free chairs anymore because Mayor Wren is going to be doing some other garage sale. So thank you so much. It's amazing that you're almost halfway through. It's great. And it's amazing inspiration. Thank you.
I should have mentioned as well that we do have a waiting list. I think there's 223 on the waiting list. And of course, we'll only have 132 rooms after we move the 60 people over. So this list is just keeps growing.
Councillor Severson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation. It was amazing. And thank you to your hardworking committee. Seems like you've done a really great job. And in my perspective, you said that none of the money goes towards operational capital costs. It is all for extra amenities for those that are living in the residence. And to me, that's amazing because quality of life is everything to those of us that, I'm only 12 years away from your 86. So, I could sponsor a room in anticipation. But I think we all know that my mother was in a long-term care and she got great care, but it was the basics. It was, and that's great. But to say that you're adding extra amenities to the home, I think is just amazing. And I just want to thank you and your committee for the vision of extra things for long-term care and for people in their final days of living. So thank you.
Councillor Earl.
I want to congratulate your committee too. I was at your event at George's, I want to say truck museum. I guess he runs a business sometimes too. But the, extraordinarily interesting spot, and George and was, I suspect that that's just the chip off what George has probably put into that place. And, and I wanted to mention Herb Scott, who I think that that project might be Herb's legacy. So it gets great care. The new building looks fantastic. So I'll talk to you later, but I'll commit to a minimum of $5,000. So
And I should say that
know.
Herb Scott is the chair of our Mapleview Lodge committee, and I'm the vice chair. So Herb is absolutely dedicated to this project.
He is indeed.
Well, thank you again, Mayor Hugenboom. And I think from here, staff will prepare a report to bring back to council on how we can deal with your request. And we'll certainly take it very seriously and get back to you as quickly as we can.
And I'd love to stay for your whole meeting, but I won't.
You sat through lots of council meetings. We'll let you go. All right. Thank you again. So we'll move to the staff report segment of our agenda. Councillor Hobbs, would you mind putting the first staff report with respect to the Aquatarium bylaw amendment on the floor, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the first staff report 2023-140 amendment to the Aquatarium bylaw quorum, that council approve an amendment to Aquatarium bylaw number 1 as amended to change the requirements for the establishment of quorum at meetings of the directors as follows. Section 40 of the bylaw is amended to delete it in its entirety and replace it with the following. Item 40, quorum at meetings of the Board of Directors. A majority of the directors in office from time to time shall constitute a quorum at any meeting of the board, provided, however, that directors in attendance shall be comprised of no less than a minimum of 1 director representing Brockville, 1 director representing Bytown, and 1 independent director to constitute a quorum, and that the mayor is hereby authorized to execute the resolution giving effect to this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Hobbs. The city manager is going to speak to this item.
Thank you, Your Worship. I apologize. I just noticed that the report wasn't actually attached, so I do apologize for that. It had, the current wording is it requires a simple majority of the members entitled to vote at the meeting. So rather than be made up of less than 3 of the partners, then the new change is to propose that each of the partners is represented at a meeting before it can proceed. So that's the simple change to the matter.
I think, Madam City Manager, I think having sat on the board, the challenge was there had to be 2 from each of the 3 categories, which in my time I know caused us some problems having quorum. And I think we're going from 2 representatives of each category to 1 representative of each category.
Oh,
I believe.
I
that was
apologize
the
because
change.
what I was provided was a simple majority. So I do apologize, but we are making it better.
Okay. Sure. Well, my apologies if anything changed in the meantime, but there are 2 members of the committee who are here. Would any of them like to help us clarify this?
Yeah, yes, Your Worship. I'll just confirm it. So that is correct. It's just about moving from the 2 representatives from each party down to 1, and it is to solve that sort of quorum issue. The board, I've been very pleased. We've had a great working relationship on the board recently, and it's just a way to make sure that we can make quorum a little bit more often. So yeah, very positive change.
All right. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? All right, we'll call the roll.
On the matter before you, Councillor Deary, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Earl,
Yes.
Councillor Fullerton,
Yes.
Councillor Hobbs,
Yes.
Councillor Calavas.
Yes.
Councillor Laverne,
Yes.
Councillor Severson,
Yes.
Councillor Wales.
Yes.
Mayor Wren.
Yes,
That's carried, Your Worship.
thank you so much. So the next item was deferred from the last meeting. Sorry, I have a little voting thing that's come up on my screen. Okay, so we have a deferred motion that we're bringing back. So I'm going to ask Councillor Severson if you would put the motion back on the floor, which is the second staff report on paratransit.
Thank you, Your Worship. And before I put it back on the floor, thank you to council and yourself for giving me the opportunity to speak to residents and users of the para. So that was what I wanted to say before I put it on the floor. The council approved the implementation of the in-house paratransit service plan in place of continued contracting of a service operator, and that council approves staff to complete the procurement process to purchase 2 wheelchair accessible vans with a preference to hybrid vehicles at an estimated cost not to exceed 220,000, funded by debenture in accordance with the in-house paratransit service plan. And that council approve the 2023 operating budget staffing increase in the amount of 34,943, funded by the Transit Reserve to hire a transit service coordinator for November and December 2023, and 4 transit drivers for December 2023, in accordance with the in-house paratransit service plan. And
Thanks,
I
Councillor
believe that,
Severson. I'm going to do a couple of things before I
Okay.
come back to you. I'm going to in a moment ask you to speak first because you're the one that's been doing some consultation, but there's 2 things I want to do before that. The first is I'd just like to say, based on some feedback and contacts that I've had, I want to make one thing abundantly clear to the community. There isn't one person sitting here that doesn't want the very best of service for those that rely on paratransit. We want to make sure that whatever decision we make provides at least as good a service today, if not better, when we move forward into January. Every member of council, I don't even feel I'm out in a limb saying every member of council feels that that's the priority. I know every member of our staff feels that that's the priority. And I just want to make sure the community understands that. So I'm going to ask Mr. Wood if he has any comments from staff before we proceed to debate this item. And after that, I'll come back to Councillor Severson for any updates from her community consultation. And then we'll take all the time we need to discuss this thoroughly. Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. So I guess I could offer 2 things. I could offer what staff have done in lieu of the last time we met, or I can do an overview of where we are to now, and maybe perhaps I ask for some guidance on that.
Why don't we do an overview?
So through Your Worship, so what staff have done is provide a service plan alternative to what we currently have for paratransit, and I'll maybe rewind to what our municipal obligations are. So under legislation, any municipality that offers a transit system has to be able to offer a accommodation for mobility challenges at no additional cost. So long and the short is, if a municipality has a system, it has to be able to provide some barrier-free access, really with no additional cost to the rider. So the city does this in 2 ways. Back when the legislation was enacted, we didn't quite have the equipment that we have now. Through replacement, we now have all of our conventional buses are capable of accommodating somebody with, for instance, a wheelchair or a mobility device. So there is lifts on every single conventional bus that we have. In addition to that, probably as a propagation of what the original service plans were, the city offers a parallel or para-transit system that's offered through a third-party contractor to operate. And what that is a door-to-door ride booking transit system, whereby a qualified user that's qualified through staff can call, reserve a time to be picked up to go to somewhere, and vice versa, schedule a return trip. So the paratransit service has been operated by the same contractor now for the balance of a decade, and that contract has matured. And through the pandemic, staff had worked to perpetuate the options for extension of that contract, which is now at the end of its available perpetuation. So what staff do in these cases is evaluate, of course, the service that's being delivered, what the options are, and of course, investigate if there's any options for savings or modification. So in this case, what staff did was evaluate what it would cost or what provisioning would be required to operate the equivalent service that exists today with 2 vehicles and the capacity for ridership, using it as an extension of our conventional system. So of course, utilizing the in-house maintenance, the fuel consumption, and purchasing power that the city currently has for its conventional system, and see what that would look like in a para system. So we also utilized feedback from our current service provider, who indicated that they too would not be in favor at the time of a 1-year extension if it was possible, but more that they would need a long-term commitment to be able to reestablish their infrastructure. They also indicated that there would be cost increases, and they give us an estimate of what that was, which are reflected in our report and our analysis. And then we also looked at what if any, if efficiencies could be gained through that contractor, and there was some limitations to that. So as a result of that staff evaluation, what we had provided was a service plan that again proposed this as an in-house option where the city could buy new vehicles and also maintain the capacity for ridership, as well as operate it in equivalent where we had a dedicated person on the phone to answer the phone, take reservations, this sort of thing, with some, you know, I suppose proposed intentions to be able to modernize it eventually. Not change it so somebody couldn't call, but certainly offer more efficient platforms to use. What staff were able to project through budget modeling and through presentation was that staff could indeed purchase new vehicles, operate them based on our current models for conventional system, and operate it at projected surplus. Of course, in our last meetings, there were some questions around vehicles and what's available. So staff have done a lot of work behind the scenes to sort of quantify what's available, what is possible, and how things work. So in this point, staff are certainly available to answer any questions, and look forward to being able to provide the information needed to make a decision.
Thanks, Mr. Wood, and we all thank you, Mr. Locke, for all the time you've besides the detailed overviews here. There's been a lot of correspondence between staff and council on this issue, and we really appreciate all the work that you've done on this. So let's go back to Councillor Severson to share with us what she's learned since our last meeting, and then I'm happy to take speakers as people wish.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. And I might also like to thank staff for their presentations and to the answering of what I gathered up over the last couple of weeks in calls from paratransit users. Most of the calls that I received, as I said 2 weeks ago when I asked for it to be deferred, were from, I'm not going to say seniors, because I didn't ask their age, because I don't think that's relevant, because anybody can have an accessibility issue at any age. So, but worried would be kind of an understatement in my mind, because I've had at least 30 phone calls or emails, and I'm sure the rest of council has had similar calls, though maybe not to the extent that I got, because I think my name is in the bus. So, which I agreed. They called and asked me, and I said, yeah, go ahead. The first night that it went in the bus, I believe, I was up till almost 11 o'clock talking to paratransit users. A lot of the calls, I have to say, gave me a headache because I'm worried for them as much as they're worried about change. Change does not come easy for someone with an accessibility issue. And they worry about, well, I addressed that to all of council and to staff. One of the concerns was the drivers that they have. Some of the paratransit users, if not all, that I spoke with, feel that the drivers, the majority of the drivers, are like family to them, because some of the users don't have any other family here, and they know their names, they know their doctors, they know their schedules, and so they feel this family feeling when they are with these drivers. And I know, and one of the questions that Mr. Woods responded to and Mr. Locke was, will the drivers, if we went in-house, be swung over into the city fold? Or if it went out to RFP, would that happen? And there's no guarantee. That's why I told everybody that that would be like kind of virtually impossible, which they were really kind of upset about that answer. But I said, I cannot promise that, because that is something that cannot be addressed. The other was cost. Seniors that are on a fixed income were worried that the cost would go up. So they asked me, I said, it can never go above what a conventional transit system has, and it cannot go beyond what we budgeted for this year. So the answer to that I would believe is no, the cost won't go up, but I'll confirm the answer, and I have it confirmed by Mr. Wood that no, the cost would not go up this year until we go into probably next year's budget and that kind of thing. Booking. A lot of them were talking about computers and booking online and or other issues that a lot don't have computers. A lot were worried they can't see. They have varying abilities to book, and they were worried that ability to book by phone would be taken away from them. And that's also not true, because the ability to book by phone is still going to be there. Mr. Woods has assured me that will still be available to users of the para. Am I right in that, Mr. Wood? Yes.
Through your worship, yes. Our proposal dedicates a staff for customer service, and primary function of that would be booking rides.
Okay. I think this was maybe of all of them, apart from the drivers, this was one of the major concerns that I heard, and probably many others heard, was right now, I believe it's a lift that para uses to get people on and off the buses. So, but not everybody is in a wheelchair. Some are blind, some are walkers, a lot are walkers. And they're worried that a ramp, so to speak, is that if that was there, or are they going to feel safe? They said, we feel safe now the way the system is. I believe it's ramp, right? No, lift. So here is what I read from Mr. Wood. This concern is difficult to address because staff cannot anticipate every means to which someone may need assistance. So I need clarity on that one.
So through your worship, the detail I was trying to provide is that the design of nearly every vehicle we looked at, whether it had a lift or ramp, was to accommodate somebody with a mobility issue. That doesn't preclude or exclude any one particular condition. The system, as it's currently being provided, as it's being proposed to be provided, has a number of means that will ideally mitigate some of those issues. One is that as a policy, the city affords escorts for anybody at no extra cost. So if someone had any particular challenge, their escort is certainly welcome. If they don't have an escort, the specific objective of the driver is to be able to assist somebody into and out of any particular vehicle arrangement that is chosen. So again, I didn't want to suggest that these were specifically purpose built for one mode of mobility accommodation or another. Hopefully that is helpful.
Sort of. Say we move as a council and as a city into an in-house usage of the paratransit system, and we order these vans. Will we be ordering a van with a lift or a ramp, or is that an option that's open to us as a council?
Thank you again, through your worship. To address that, what we've proposed initially is that we would use a modified, basic traditional minivan. They have a lowered floor and they are able to work that way. Those models come by default with a ramp. Part of what staff had done after the first meeting was investigate a hybrid option and get some costs around that. One of the other things we had done was to investigate what other municipalities are doing, because we're not necessarily reinventing the wheel here. This is something that other municipalities are moving towards in one regard or another. One of the things that's most common, I would say, is actually a slightly larger van that is a what's the equivalent, if anyone's familiar with a transit van or a Dodge Ram ProMaster. It's a larger cargo style. It is able to be equipped with a hydraulic lift. So I guess I wanted to suggest that if a ramp is required, that is an option. The other thing that's certainly optional is that, as I mentioned, our conventional buses have lifts. We are going to take delivery of new buses at the end of this year. If, again, in terms of ability to adapt, one of those buses that will be taken out of frontline service for the conventional system is able to be deployed in this case, if there was a special needs case. And this is part of what we would have flexibility with in the in-house model.
You probably get right back up again. So, so am I understanding that, we could order, as you're saying, we could order a larger van that would be a lift or a ramp or just a lift with the ability to have a ramp? Is that what you said?
Yes, so through your worship, yes, that is an option. The ones that we've provided were pretty much exclusively, or sorry, the ones that we've proposed in our plan were almost exclusively proposed because of the ridership that we see reported from our current service delivery. The configuration of 2 minivans that are accessible for wheelchairs and devices are adequate to meet the needs of what we see our current demand to be. There's no reason for staff to propose to go to a larger unit with a ramp. But it is certainly something that's, sorry, excuse me, a lift, excuse me. Yes. There's no reason that staff, based on what we had seen in terms of the demand for ridership, would suggest a larger vehicle with a lift. However, if that was something that council wanted to consider, we certainly could. And we already know generally what the price and delivery of those are.
Okay, you guys stay up. Because so following that, because I had asked a question, how many users are right now in the paratransit system? And due to privacy issues and whatnot, I guess we don't have an exact number of that. Is that correct, Mr. Locke?
Sorry, I was being asked if you could just.
Okay, so the question that I had asked to you or Mr. Wood was how many current users do we have of the para system? And apparently we don't have an exact number because of the privacy issue of people that die or people that move are still on our system. So I guess I'm wondering, two-part question. Would we be able to, if we went in-house, have a better knowledge of how many users, thereby the costing would be, like, you want to know how many times you use something to see if it's affordable, if not even affordable. I can't think of the right word, but anyways, and also then we might get an idea in-house of what the users were using, because I don't know how you would know how many people use a walker. Like the majority of people that I talk to, I'd say half are using walkers. So, and they're worried that a ramp, they're going to fall. They're just worried about falls, as you would as a senior, as a person with an accessibility issue. If you fall, do you know what I mean? Like, so I guess that's a two-part question.
Sure. So yes, through you, your worship. Yeah, so the number of active users we have is a bit of a difficult question to answer. I mean, we know we deliver 790 rides per month on average. Now, when we look at our user list, there's somewhere between 100 and 200 different, like, unique active users that are making up those 800-ish rides. Now, but if you look at our approved user list is very long, because we don't go back and if somebody has passed away or if somebody has left the region, we don't remove them from our approved list. So if you look at the total number of approved riders we have, it's a huge list, but the number of unique active riders is between 100 and 200 per month, making up 800 rides. And so, as you can imagine, we have a mix of riders who use it once a month and people who use it 2 or 3 times a day in some cases. So yes, if we brought it in-house, I mean, we would most likely have a better knowledge of our user base, just because it would be our staff delivering the rides. But despite the fact that I say we don't have an exact number of known active users in a month, we certainly know how many rides we're delivering within the month. Yeah, so the question about fear specifically with walkers. So we don't know exactly how many riders use a walker currently. So the way that we report to the province, the way that we collect data is you have to report ambulatory and non-ambulatory rides. And so non-ambulatory refers to wheelchairs or scooters. So about a third of our ridership uses a wheelchair or a scooter. They are a non-ambulatory ride, and about 2/3 are ambulatory, but that could be somebody who uses a cane, somebody who uses a walker. So they may still be using a slightly less invasive mobility device that are within that 2/3. So I do not have an exact number of the percentage of riders who use a walker currently. And then, yeah, just to speak to, so the concern about a ramp versus a lift. So yeah, currently just trying to give as much information as possible. Currently with a lift, the person with the walker stands on the lift. The lift is able to lift a maximum of 1,000 pounds. And so they secure them within the lift area. They're lifted up to the higher level of the bus. And then that person walks from the lift to their seating area. So if you were looking at a van, whether it was a full-size van or a minivan, that person would functionally have two different options depending on their mobility level. So somebody could assist them in walking up the ramp, which would be more challenging than walking onto a flat lift because there is an incline involved, or the driver or their medical escort could walk them to the side of the bus and help them into the front passenger seat, and then take their walker into the cargo area of the van. So it would depend on the person's individual mobility level of how they would get onto the van. But certainly there would be an option for them to be able to get into the van without having to walk up the ramp specifically. So yeah, and I should mention, there is a ramp involved, but that ramp is getting you up one step. So these vans are built to be low floor, so they sit functionally one step above ground level. And so that ramp is really there to help people with a wheelchair get on. So, you know, if that person has a high enough mobility level to get up one step, then they really don't need the deployment of the ramp in order to get into the van.
And Mr. Locke, the van is parked on the road, generally up against a sidewalk, which is higher. So the video I saw, the ramp is almost level. There's very little incline in many applications. Would you agree?
I would agree. And in fact, that's part of staff's recommendation towards a van is that, yeah, in many cases, they're pulling up to the curb. And so it really allows us to get into closer spaces, closer to people's front door, and basically get as close to, you know, barrier free or having no step as possible.
Thank
you. Yeah, that's that part is good to know. I did see that in the video that you both provided this afternoon. I watched, and that could alleviate some of the concerns of people that are using the system right now. And there's a lot of answers they didn't have, and I didn't really have for them at that moment. One of the other questions that some of them had was due to the number of, sometimes there's 5 or 6 or 5 maybe on the para system as it stands right now. The models that you're proposing, do you have any idea? Like, I think it says here, up to 2 conventional. I don't know. I think they were worried about having to drive around all the city of Brockville to pick up people or drop them off. And then, so timing, if there's not as many that can fit on the van. So could you address that issue as to what the difference in seating? I know I see an answer here, but could you address it so that it's live on camera?
Thank you, through your worship. So the models that we'd looked at talked to being able to seat 1 or 2 conventional wheelchairs or 1 large or motorized. And it also has the ability, or basically they all come almost standard with a full back row. So you have 1 to 3 seats there that could be used with seatbelts, and an additional 1 in the front, depending on the configuration. Now, again, I tried to make this data driven. We didn't see from the data we have a lot of instances where there was many people accompanying each other on a ride. Again, on average, we're seeing, you know, if you dismiss at least peak times, we're seeing about an average of 3 rides per hour, which, again, looking at the assessment of what we proposed and trying to make it equivalent, doesn't really see a lot of overlapping rides at all. And this is part and reason why a van is a more economical version of providing the service, because a bus is much larger. It can seat up to 18 at a time. It, of course, is more fuel consumption. And really, that just isn't what we're seeing in terms of trend. So based on what we've proposed with 2 vans, you'd have the ability to seat, again, multiple devices if needed, 1 specialized device, which is not that different than what we're seeing, at least in the data now from the current provider. And for the 2/3 that don't have or are ambulatory, don't have a device, so to speak, it could seat roughly 5 or 4 at a time. So
just a final observation that some of the users had, or final question sort of was generality was worried about booking. How far in advance will it change the way it is now? Like for a person to book, do they have to book a month in advance? Is that going to change? Can you explain the booking process and how long, or if there will be changes to that?
Certainly, and through your worship. So currently what the city has is a policy towards prioritizing booking. That's something that's handed down to the contractor. And from what we've understood from this process is that the contractor doesn't adhere to it, strictly. And in fact, just to generalize, there is priority given to folks who are going for medical treatments, for instance, or this sort of thing. I know there was a question about returning from the hospital, which of course we can figure out. But generally speaking, if something was going for regular treatment at the hospital, they would get a priority booking. There is some that are fairly consistent, like for instance, for work, and all of this is laid out in the policy. Our staff proposal doesn't suggest changing that really in any restrictive sense at all. If someone calls and they're used to calling and booking a ride to go to work in the morning, for all intents and purposes, that would be the same. What we are proposing is that with an in-house model, we could work closer with BMAC, for instance, and say, is there a way to improve this? Because we really haven't revisited it in 10 plus years. Is there an ability to modernize it where you don't have to call? Well, certainly there is. We wouldn't restrict people from calling, but there is an ability to review it, say what can we do to improve it? Certainly not restrict it, but improve it.
Okay, I'm going to leave my remarks now and just say thank you to staff. Thank you to all the people that called so that council knows they were really happy to have their concerns listened to. And and the accessibility committee I've spoken with quite a bit, and who are also happy that we are engaged with them in this process. So I'm passing it on to my fellow colleagues.
Thank you for all your hard work on this, Councillor Severson. Appreciate it. Councillor Hobbs next, followed by Councillor Deary, Councillor Wales.
Thank you, Your Worship. When this all started, I had sort of two main concerns from based on the calls that I had received as well. And the one main one was the loss of their friends who are their drivers today. And I think it's really important to understand that the option is not between the city providing this service and keeping the existing provider with existing drivers, because for a fairness policy and competitive, we have to go to RFP. There's no guarantee we would end up with the same company. And I know if these drivers today decided they wanted to leave their company, they would be free to apply for the city position if the city does take it over based on our decisions today. But I can really understand that and really empathize. I know it's important to seniors when they see a familiar face and they feel more comfortable, and that's great. But we do have to be fair in this instance as well and follow policy as we do for every other situation. But the second thing I was concerned about was, of course, the ramps. And then I was in Toronto this weekend for the film festival, and lo and behold, what pulls up but a van to pick up somebody in a very busy part of downtown Toronto while the film festival is going on, with a ramp that folded out, and it was really on the same level as the street. And they very easily accessed the vans. And I thought that is easier than pulling up and trying to do a lift. And I understand we would use a lift when you have to go up a couple of feet to get into a bus. But these vans, I was like, I cannot believe that this just is so easy. And granted, I didn't use it, but I watched it. And so it was just interesting to me knowing about this going on here and noticing all the different ways they took care of transit for people with mobility issues in Toronto. Some of it's taxis, some of it's vans. It's not big buses. And so if they don't have an issue with, not having enough room for people with their vans that they use, and then, to be fair, I don't know how many they use, I doubt we will either. I think we can get around and provide a pretty good service. So that's why I'm supportive of this. I do understand the reluctance of the existing users. It's hard. It's really hard. And I know dealing with elderly parents, it's hard when people lose their licenses and are dependent on another service. It's very important to me, as you mentioned, for all of us in council, that we provide a really good service. These are our parents and our grandparents and our friends and family. So thank you very much for everything you've done. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Councillor Hobbs. Councillor Deary.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to Councillor Severson for giving us an opportunity to pause and make sure that we had all the answers that we all were looking for. And also to Mr. Wood and Mr. Locke for the extra work that was put on both of you to try to help us get a clear understanding and send the right message out to the community. When I was looking at this, much like some of my fellow councillors, I was looking at the pros and the cons, and I wanted to make sure, as Mayor Wren pointed out, that whatever we decide on has to be in the best interest of the community and the ridership. And I got quite a few calls, actually. Not many were negative. There were some that complained about some of the issues they had with respect to service level in terms of when they could get rides, waiting periods. But most of it was very favorable for the current provider in terms of the relationships they'd built with their drivers. And I think we've all kind of acknowledged that was sort of one of the nervous points for many of the users. And we want to make sure that that doesn't go without some further discussion. But one of the things I just wanted to get some reassurance from the city, because we do want to be able to provide the highest level of service. My understanding is that there are different skills training courses for paratransit drivers. And I wanted to make sure that regardless of as to who we hire to do this job and whatever background experience they have, that because we want to maintain the highest level, have we looked into training courses for those particular candidates once they become successful candidates and work with the city as drivers?
Through your worship. So the short answer to that is we haven't looked at specific training for paratransit. I would suggest that the training that we have currently has more to do with operating the equipment and safely facilitating rides. Our HR department or human resources department is very, I'd say, active at training things that are, I would say, more modern than perhaps what was existing in the last 10 years. So mental health training and awareness training and this sort of thing. So I think based on that suggestion, it's probably something that we should take on as a specific skill set to improve, I think, our service level across the whole system.
And I do appreciate that. And I really hope that we do take that into account because, obviously there's a delicate nature here of the people that we work with. So please, if we could look into that and make sure that that's part of our overall package. And just the last thing that I wanted to point out, and I think it was kind of eloquently pointed out to each and every one of us, is that we have control over some data that we don't have right now. So we not only can look at how the current service levels are being provided, but we also, with bringing this in-house, we can look for ways to improve. We can continue to look for continuous improvement opportunities. I'm not referring to say not necessarily the efficiencies, but maybe the efficiencies of delivery, and look at how we can be, step it up another level. And if we're getting feedback from our end users and they're telling us that they're seeing delays or that, we can sit down and decide how do we resolve those issues. Currently, when we bring in a third-party provider, we're dependent on them to do those things. But if we have control of it in-house, that gives us an added advantage there. And the last thing that I just wanted to say is, and I know that this is something that future councillors are going to have to really take into consideration when you bring third-party providers in. We have no control over costs. We have no control at all. These are profit-driven businesses, and not that I'm opposed to profit-driven businesses, but as we saw with solid waste, we were very fortunate that our staff did a very good job in putting us in a better position than we would have been had we gone with the original single source provider that was given to us. So I just want to say that I hope, and I know our staff is constantly challenged with looking for efficiencies, but that's something that we can ask of our staff. If a third-party provider comes back in 4 years or 5 years at the end of the contract and tells us that the price is doubled or tripled, and there's no one, it's a single source supplier, then we are pretty much in a bit of a pickle at that point. So So I do appreciate the work that's done. I will be voting in favor with this motion today, so I'll pass that back to my peers.
Thanks, Councillor Deary. Councillor Wells.
Well, thanks very much, Your Worship. Thanks again to Councillor Severson for her work and hearing from members of the community. And thanks as well to staff for all of their work on this file. One thing I do want to acknowledge is I think that consultation is always important. And here we had an opportunity maybe to be consulting a little bit earlier with our user groups than we ended up consulting. We did consult with BMAC fairly early on, but that doesn't necessarily include all of the people who are using the service on a day-to-day basis. So the good news is it's an ongoing service, right? So the consultation and the engagement with the user groups can and will continue. And I'm quite confident that it will continue given sort of some of the feedback from this initial start. I think we all understand how important it is that we're engaging users on how they use the service. And I am given confidence by the fact that if we are in control of the service, we can respond somewhat nimbly to those concerns and that feedback and change the way that it's being provided. So we're often in tension at council between our sort of perceived roles. I think in the public, we have a governance role at the council table, and we're not necessarily getting into the weeds of operations and how exactly service is delivered. But when we're talking about city services, that is what can impact our residents the most. So often we do get calls and we get contacted about the very, very specific issues about how a service is being delivered. So it's not the type of thing that would normally end up in a council motion. You know, we wouldn't necessarily specify in a council motion the type of equipment that would be on a van. What we do specify and what is expected is that we're going to provide a service that is safe above all, convenient, reliable. Those are all messages that staff have received, and those are things that they're going to take on. And as challenges come up, if they come up, then this is the body where people can come to register their concerns. We can take that to staff. They'll speak with staff directly, I'm sure, and there will be instances that don't even reach the council chamber, I'm sure, pieces of feedback that are directly delivered to staff and that are responded to at the staff level. So I was going to ask about a technical detail around the vans, but we've had the question answered of we've got backup plans. If we end up with a user who for some reason can't use a ramp, we do have vehicles available that have the lift. And we would also be able to look at with future purchases, because we do go through vehicles, you know, we do have to turn over vehicles every once in a while, then we would be able to take that into account for future services as vehicle purchases as well. So I'm also in support of bringing this in-house because of the control that we have over how the service is delivered. I'm confident in the intentions that staff have put forward and how this service is going to be delivered. And over the next few months, as we move to take over the service, if that is council's direction tonight, I know that staff will be hard at work making sure that on day one, when the service rolls out, that it will be a service that we can be proud of and that people who use the service today can rely on. And the last benefit that I will put forward is that it's the same one for any contracted service. If we bring it in-house, we have that stability over the long term. We can do long-term planning in a way that a business that knows that their contract is going to be up for renewal every 3 to 5 years can't. This is a core service because transit is a core service. The paratransit is a part of our transit service delivery. So I view this as bringing something that really should have been delivered by the city home. It's not a reflection of the current provider. We've had them taking care of the service for quite some time. It's about making sure that we are providing the best possible service. That's all this is. So I hope that we have been able to allay some concerns in the community. And I know that we'll continue to work and staff will continue to work to make sure that people can have confidence in this service when it rolls out in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Are there any more speakers? Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship. I voted against this last time, and it's probably not going to change this time. I've heard a lot of people talk about that, it'll go to the city and then things will get nothing but better. The problem is if it goes to the city is that, we have judging from the phone calls that we've all had, the letters we've all had, the people are quite happy with what they have. Then in fact, they're actually, telling us not to change. They're so happy with it. And, we're now taking the position, but we can make you happier. I'm not sure about that. The conventional wisdom in the, on the streets is that, and in the businesses is that the private sector can usually provide things better and cheaper than the public sector. Now, if we switch from, we have a single source contract now, but we can change that single source contract based on whatever level the contract is. If it's a year contract, a 2-year, a 3-year contract. If we don't like it and the service isn't right, 180 degree turn in whatever the length of the contract is. If we move this service that everyone is happy with inside the city, well, now you're starting to talk about severance pays and the union issues, and you start to, I don't think we've ever had a threat from our private workers of a work to rule or the labor strife. So we lose that. And we lose the ability if the private sector provides the service, people are happy with it, that's good. If they're not happy with it, we have the ability to pivot fairly quickly and get someone else that can do it better or cheaper. We lose that ability when we take it in-house. I think we're the ones that put the citizens at risk if we change to the citizens. Do we have the statistical evidence we do at the city? Probably not. But, based on the anecdotal evidence that each and every one of you guys have been provided with by the citizens and the riders, the anecdotal evidence seems overwhelming that the citizens and the riders of the service are pretty happy. One anecdotal evidence I'll give is that there's a Richard's Coffee House downtown provides 3 dinners a year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter, where they invite all the handicapped people and an open supper for those three holidays. The current provider, when the people haven't been able to get to the dinner, they've been picking up the dinners and taking it to their clients because they know them so well. They've been delivering meals to them at, and I believe that was all at no charge. That, they have endeared themselves to their riders, and I think that endearment is worth something. It's not worth another statistic. I think it's quite important that they have accepted, the endearment from the citizens. So, this is a step that if you take it, it's very hard to reverse. If you have a contract, you can make it a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year contract, and you can reverse that. If we don't get the same accolades from the citizens, when we take it in-house, we can't reverse that one near as easy, and it certainly won't be expensive. So, someone spoke about safety on the thing. I don't think I got a single call that talked about the safety on either with a regular transit or paratransit. That didn't seem to be a concern. I don't think there's there's a safety issue on our standard transit or our paratransit. It just hasn't come up as something that, any of the phone calls and letters that I got suggested that, either service was a safety issue. But it worries me greatly that, we've had this council in the year that it sat has come up with, every time we have something before council, we take it back in-house and we build a larger in-house system. We've done it for forestry, we've started it with mowing, we've done it with tourism, and now we're doing it with transit. And we don't have any of the data back from those other places that says that it's cheaper or better or safer or anything else. But every time that decision comes before council, we take it back in-house. And every time we take it in-house, we don't gain control over it. We lose control over it because it is, as I've seen over the years I've spent on council, it's very hard to change something if it has become a city contract and revolves around unions and so on. So there's you have the flexibility to make changes if something's not right when it's in the private sector, but you do not have that ability to make the change if it's in-house. If it's in-house, it's going to be an awfully hard and expensive thing to change. So those are the things that concern me, and in this case, I have to vote with the citizens, and the citizens to me have spoken very loudly as to what they want. I'm not in the mood to counter the citizens and say, you don't know what you're talking about. We're the city, we know better. Citizens have spoken and I'm listening.
Councillor Fullerton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to be clear, the option that is open to us is not to just keep renewing this current contract year over year. We've already done that a number of times. We're a public entity, we're a public body. We need to put this out to tender, and there's absolutely no guarantee that the current provider would be the successful applicant in that case. And we've also been told by the applicant that it requires a longer term contract because they have to buy new buses. And in order to get the financing, they have to be able to show that they have a commitment for a long-term contract. So that's not an option, and that's not what we're able to entertain here. It's either we put it out for tender or we bring it in-house. I think that staff has made a very good case for demonstrating that we would gain some synergies with our existing transit service. And, I had the same calls you all had. And yeah, people are concerned about their relationships that they've had with the drivers. And I agree with Councillor Deary, this is going to be a training issue. And, we're going to have to make sure that whoever it is that is driving our buses are kind, courteous, respectful people that can make their riders feel safe and comfortable with the current service. But I think that the proposal that city staff have brought us modernizes our service. It brings us in line with what other municipalities are doing in terms of going to these vans. I think that people will find that the ride in this van is a comfortable ride. And I think once they get used to it, they're going to enjoy it and it will be all right. But I understand change is hard. Change is hard for any of us, in our lives. And when you have vulnerabilities, they're all the more hard. But, we have to go by our own processes. And the process is you cannot keep sole sourcing a contract, particularly not a $500,000 contract, and keep awarding it to the same company year after year after year, and particularly not when they're looking for a renewal of 5 years. Like, this isn't just say, well, we'll give them one more year to keep it going and for us to look into it more. That's not an option in this case. And that's what we've been doing. And I have every confidence in our staff. We run the regular transit. I'm quite sure that they'll know how to run paratransit. And I think there will be efficiencies for us in terms of dispatching, in terms of being able to do things with our equipment, in terms of knowing where our vehicles are. And, you know, it is an opportunity for us to have improvement. And I think, you know, the feedback loop for us, when there are problems, will come into the city. Whereas, you know, we all felt what happened with our solid waste contractor during COVID. And the garbage wouldn't be picked up for 2 days and nobody would know what was going on. And, you know, but they weren't accountable to the city in the same way. This will make this service accountable to our staff. And I think that's going to be a benefit to us. So I certainly support it. And I thank Councillor Severson for talking to the citizens, because I do think that, and I found this myself, is that when we talk to them and you know, when you can let them know that we're concerned for them and that we really do want this to be as good or better service than what they currently have, you know, they feel good about that. And I think they're willing to try. And I think we can make this work for everyone. But, you know, I think people need to understand that the status quo was not an option going forward, is that there was a risk in terms of putting this out to RFP. And that's what you have to do in a public body like ours. So.
And we have to go with the low cost bidder and who can control that. Thank you, Councillor Fullerton. Councillor Laverne, and I have Councillor Calavas.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question for staff, if I may. Let's pretend that today we're saying, yes, we're going to move forward and we're going to bring it in-house. I see that, you know, we're going to have like the 4 transit drivers for December. Are we good with the timing, knowing that, you know, everyone's looking for work, but no one is working? I don't know, you know, like everyone is looking for people and for that coordinator as well. And to Councillor Derry's point about the training for like how to put straps and to make sure that, you know, the wheelchair is safe and secure. I did a short training because I work for the Rick Hansen Foundation. So I traveled across the country with wheelchairs for 9 months. I know how to strap them. But like, do we have, I just want you to reassure me, Mr. Wood, that if we were to go with that today, we are confident that we're gonna have the driver properly trained and everything ready to wheel for November or December.
Thank you, and through your worship. So perhaps it would be helpful just to know that cities actually recruited drivers a few times this year already. So you know, we have a pool of full-time drivers and we have a pool of part-time drivers, and occasionally one of the part-time drivers or one of the full-time drivers will become unavailable. We'll replace that. So that happens fairly, I don't want to say regularly, but it happens often enough that we do have a plan where we've hired folks, bring them on, train them. I would say that our process for training is an informal process. We do require people that are hired to have the appropriate MTO licensing, which is separate from what the city does, but it is a peer process where we have a senior driver currently that accompanies the new drivers and gets them used to the routes, gets them used to the processes, and does that. So that more or less does already exist. I think there's an opportunity, as Councillor Derry and yourself had pointed out, where we should look into additional training for perhaps sensitivity for certain clients, and that's always a good thing. I think always reflecting on how we can improve training is positive. But in terms of the timeline we've laid out, we have plenty of time to recruit. We have plenty of time to train new drivers, and it's a bit maybe not as clear cut as saying we're going to specifically add 4 drivers. What we put in our proposals that we would we foresee needing the equivalent of 4 full-time driver hours. One of the things that benefits us in this case, and was touched on in the report, is that our current full-time drivers, with the way the schedule works, with the way regulations work, only work 31 hours, 31 and a half hours a week. So there is an opportunity to facilitate those full-time hour requirements with drivers we have. So inevitably we'll bringing more drivers on board, but we also have the ability with both the full-time and the part-time staff to offer them more hours with folks that are already trained. And I think that's a positive thing to be able to offer that. But I didn't want to give the impression that we were wholesale going to have to bring 4 brand new souls on board and show them everything. The reality is we will advertise for more folks and bring them on board, but we also have the ability to further offer more hours to our existing staff.
Thank you. Any follow-up? Okay, Councillor Calavas.
So we're in a position here now where we're either going to sole source potentially if we stayed with the present provider, or we don't do that and we sole source it to ourselves and we don't go out for bids. So I kind of like the RFP process here. I'm willing to I thought that that's what we were going to see at one point, was the ability to be able to compare what the RFP process was going to do, and then compare it to what we've, which is a great report for in-house. There's no doubt about that. But I still like the idea of being able to do a comparable, which we don't have that ability to do. So all we have now is the provider that we have, and whether or not there's still an ability to deal with that provider. And you know, it's our bylaw that says that we have to, we can still sole source, and we can amend our procurement bylaw if necessary in order to extend the contract if the provider is willing to do so. I don't know why they wouldn't be. I know that they're talking about they need a multi-year contract, which I'm not averse to. I know the service is second to none, and I know that the riders are happy with it. So we're not giving them the opportunity to either bid on this because we're not going to negotiate with them or go through an RFP process, because if we go one way with the motion here, it's just to do a single source in-house. So yeah, it's just not something that I'm used to doing. I'm used to doing some sort of an RFP process here, so we have some comparables, and we're not doing that. So right now I like the thought of, I'll take my chances on the RFP process if that's what we have to do. Otherwise, we negotiate with the current contractor and negotiate a 5-year deal if necessary. But I'm, you know, just going in-house for the sake of going in-house. I get the whole situation. I've heard the report, and it's excellent, don't get me wrong, but I do like the idea of the service that we're providing, of the lifts. And I don't know if I necessarily want to move away with that. I certainly know that the riders that I have spoken to, which have been numerous, are all saying the same thing, that they don't want to move away from that type of service. So there we go.
Thanks, Councillor Calavas. I asked some questions about process and found out there are some technicalities that the city has to be conscious of. So I'm not sure whether the city manager or Mr. Wood would like to explain the situation we find ourselves in with respect to RFPs and in-house.
Certainly, and thank you through your worship. So maybe be helpful. I just wanted to reiterate, and again, with this report, with the suggestion, or sorry, with the proposal, with the alternative to the proposal, which was the public RFP, certainly staff are here to support any of those. In terms of how we got to today, Councillor Calavas is 100% right. We took information we had from the current service provider and used it as a comparison to what we could do in-house. So that is certainly correct. In terms of what the other options are for in-house, I'd maybe like to provide some detail for that. So Councillor Calavas is 100% right. We can go to a public tender, and in fact, our procurement policies dictate that we must, if we're going to look at it, because of the value of it being nearly $500,000. We are obligated to go that way by our own policies, by procurement practices. It's important to note too that that again, this service and all of the transit service we have is heavily subsidized, and I wouldn't venture to guess that that part of that transfer payment agreement, so to speak, isn't hinged on legitimate procurement practice. So I think that's certainly a factor to consider. That being said, in terms of sole sourcing and single sourcing, our procurement policy details that there are certain instances when that is qualifiable as a procedure to move forward. In this case, because we know that there are other service providers like this, it would be very difficult to make that argument, so to speak, in terms of the policy. That being said, council is the only body that has the authority to do that. It certainly isn't something staff would pursue without council approval, and it isn't something that staff would propose as a recommendation because it is in contrast or in conflict with our policies and procurement practices.
Could I just ask someone to clarify though? It was, I believe if I understood it correctly, you can't run an RFP and look at an internal service. If you issue an RFP, you've got to award a contract. You don't have the choice to say, no, we don't like any of those options. We'll do it ourselves. Did I understand that correctly?
Through your worship, you are correct. If the city was to issue an RFP with intent, we would have to follow through with either satisfying it and proceeding with the qualifiable low bid or qualifying a successful tender, or we'd have to have a extremely good reason why not to, which certainly wouldn't hold water in this case. I don't think we would be potentially, if we issued an RFP and didn't follow through with it, we would be exposed in terms of that participating tender looking at damages.
And those rules are set by the federal or provincial government. We're not talking our local bylaw. Right.
Yeah, so through your worship. So our procurement policy reflects a number of different agreements that manage procurement for both municipalities and in general, but and those are reflective of things right down to trade agreements and this sort of thing, to make sure again that public money is spent in a equitable and fair way.
So if we don't follow the rules, the city stands liable to an action brought against us.
In this case, especially because, sorry, through your worship, in this case, and especially because of the dollar value, it stands to reason that it would be probably ill-advised to issue something like that and not follow through with it or use it as leverage, I suppose.
Thank you. Okay, so I think everybody's spoken once. I think Councillor Earl wants to respond to something. I see Councillor Wales' hand, so back to you, Councillor Earl.
Well, I was going to bring 2 points up, but after the last presentation, I'll bring 3 up. The procurement policy is flexible, but it is possible to put a fixed amount on it. And if all the RFPs are over that amount, then you're not required to take an RFP that's over your budget. So I think the procurement policy of the city and of the province is more than 2 or 3 sentences long. It's a little complicated.
No one's questioning that, sir.
Okay, so I think there are instances in there where this may not be as applicable as what is stated. Now, the other 2 points I wanted to make, and Councillor Fullerton did an excellent job on hers talking about contracts and why they should be in-house. But one of the things she mentioned was, you have 2 points. One is she mentioned garbage. Because we weren't in-house and we were getting not the perfect garbage service, we had the flexibility to change. And I can't speak for everyone else's garbage pickup, but mine has been excellent with the current provider. Not quite as much with the old one, but there were challenges and COVID and labor shortages, but I haven't seen any of those challenges showing up with the provider we have now. I believe there's some problems with a thing up in the north, Renfrew, where we ship some of our stuff, but I think that was a total separate issue, and there's some other reasons behind that. But we were, by having a contractor, able to solve the problem. Whereas if we'd have been in-house, you couldn't have made a 180-degree turn. You'd had to stay with who you had. The other thing is, we've sort of just criticized the existing contract because if he would want a longer term contract. Well, if I said to the city that we wanted to try this city in-house bus contract on a 1-year basis, I think they'd have the same problem because they would have to get a bus to use for 1 year. So, what I think if we were to ask both of them to provide us a price for 1 year and they could both only prorate the cost of their bus over 1 year, there would be a worry of how to dispose of the bus for the next 4 or 5 years, whatever they chose to finance it in. If we take it in-house, we more or less have it permanently. And so we've given ourselves the option of being able to prorate the cost of the bus over 5 years. If we put an RFP out for 1 year or 2 years, then that's what you have to prorate the cost of that bus over 1 or 2 years. The price of a bus for 1 year versus 5 years is significantly different, as is the interest rate. So, that is part of writing the RFP so that, the RFP is constitutes some fairness for when you have to acquire capital equipment. And there's several ways around that. One, if the city, wants to just talk about the operations, then they can buy the buses and just RFP out the service of running the buses. They think there's that much saving. So there is ways to give the public what they ask for and to acquire the new buses and to run the buses. And if we think our maintenance facilities are so much more efficient than others, we can maintain them. So there are ways to do this and do what the citizens ask.
Okay, thank you. All right, folks, I don't want to spend the rest of the night repeating arguments that have already been made. So if anybody has any new information or a question or clarification, we can do that. If not, I think it's getting time to call the question. So Councillor Wills, you had your hand up.
Just very briefly, Your Worship, I did just want to say I appreciate where Councillor Earl is coming from, but I think that the comparison with the garbage contract is a bit apples to oranges in terms of, we decided that we didn't want to get into that business for, a few different reasons. This is a business that we're already in, people moving people around. And that is something that we can do well, and I'm confident that we'll do well. And again, I also appreciate that we've heard some people who are worried about us taking this on, but they have concerns about what the consequences of the changes are going to be above all else. We know that we can't guarantee that they're going to have the same drivers, which was a big primary concern, but we can address pretty much every other concern that was brought up around the service, around making sure that people can access the vehicles, around making sure that it's still curb to curb, around making sure that people can still call and book by phone. Those are all things that we can address and that we are going to deliver. So we are still listening to citizens who are asking for good service. And I'm also thinking about citizens who are going to be using this service 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, when the city of Brockville is still running this service and running it well. And 25 years down the road when all the buses are self-driving or flying or whatever they are at that point. So I think that this is a good, stable, long-term move, or a good long-term move for the stability of the service, which is one of the big pieces of feedback that I've heard from residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor LeBurn, sorry, Councillor Severson, pardon me.
You're falling asleep. I can see, like, from the comments on the floor that the way the vote will go if we have the vote at the moment. So my first question would be to the city manager and this does not take away what staff has done to bring the report to us about in-house, but merely my thoughts and feelings on the issue. Other than bringing it in-house, is RFP our only other option? Can you answer that question, please?
Through you, your worship, in accordance with council policies, that is our only other option.
So during COVID, we did, from what I heard during COVID, we did away with the procurement policy to extend the contract for Voyageurs. Is that right? Or Mr. Wood, can you tell me like how the contract was extended without going to RFP?
Through your worship, I don't have the contract directly in front of me, but we did exercise an extension. That's all I can really point out. And the motivation behind that was to not interrupt the service through the pandemic. But
Okay, so that is possible to you?
Without looking at the contract, I couldn't advise you. It may have had a limit on the number of extensions, or I don't know without looking at the contract. I'm sorry.
So I'm guessing, Mr. Wood, you said we don't have the contract here, so you're not sure of that answer?
through your worship, sorry. I'm not sure how many extensions were part of that specific contract. I do know that it had, we used all the extensions I was aware of are available to us on that.
You think, or you know?
I don't have it in front of me.
You don't
sorry.
know? What you?
Apparently the contractor wants a 5-year
Yes,
plus commitment. They're not interested in a 1 year is what we were made to understand.
They want a 5-year. Okay, so this is my final comment. I'm not going to make it long. I'm just going to say that if my vote is for the citizens that I spoke to, and who I think a lot of the concerns have been addressed through staff. But having said that, they're happy. And I don't know why we want to take happy away from them. So I'll be voting against it. I don't see if I put a proposal on the floor for an RFP that it will follow through, because the vote is against me. So I guess I'm not going to do that. But I'm just saying that, I know that people have said, my colleagues have said that people fear change. Well, people with accessibility issues extremely face fears of change, more so than we having all our abilities to. So from what I heard from 90% of the people, they wanted things to stay as is, understanding that that's not possible unless the contract says it is, and I don't have that in front of me. So I'm unfortunately going to be voting no tonight to the proposal with that in mind. And it's not because I don't believe that we could do it in-house. It's just that I have to follow what I've been hearing for the last couple of weeks.
Thank you, Councillor Severson. All right, I think we're ready to call the question, Madam City Manager.
Thank you, your worship. On the matter before you, Councillor Deary, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Earl,
No.
Councillor Fullerton,
Yes.
Councillor Hobbs,
Yes.
Councillor Calavas,
No.
Councillor Laverne,
I want to be happy. No.
Councillor Severson,
No.
Councillor Wales,
Yes.
Mayor Ren.
Yes,
That's carried, your worship, on a vote of 5-4.
thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And I didn't make any comments during the motion, but now that we've made a decision, I want to indicate my commitment and council's commitment to make sure that this service is provided for the people who need it in the best way possible. No, the matter's closed. We voted. No, we're on to the next agenda item, Councillor Severson. We can't speak about things that aren't on the agenda, and we voted. Okay, we have the next staff report. Can I ask Councillor Severson to put that on the floor, please? The encroachment agreement regarding Water Street. Sorry if I doubled up on you. I think you did the last one, but if you're able to do it,
Want me to-
that's great.
Do I not? Do you want me to read it?
Please,
I can speak.
you can put the motion on the floor.
Encroachment agreement of 62 Water Street East, that council authorized the mayor and clerk to execute an encroachment agreement with Gord Cameron for the encroachment of a porch, eaves, steps, and interlock sidewalk to a maximum of 2.4 meters onto the Water Street road allowance for the property located at 62 Water Street East.
Thank you. Madam City Manager, do you have any comments on this?
I'd be happy to review the proposed encroachment if there's any questions. Yes, I'm seeing a head shake. We have been approached by the property owner, Mr. Gordon Cameron, with regard to a property located on Water Street at the corner of Park Street. Mr. Cameron is undertaking a significant renovation of the property, and part of that is the removal of the existing porch and replacing it with a new porch that's in a much better condition, obviously, but that also will bring along the steps that go down from the porch and an interlocking paving sidewalk to go from the steps to Water Street sidewalk. So it is a total encroachment of 2.4 meters that was noted in the recommendation.
And questions, Councillor Fullerton?
I understand from the report that the property formerly encroached on the city property. Does this report change the footprint of the house? Is it a further encroachment, or is it simply that once he tore the old porch off, that he had to get permission again to encroach on city land?
I can answer, but I'm not particularly sure if it is, the porch is going to be of the same size. The stairs and the walkway, I believe, may have gone to Park Street rather than Water Street previously. But because of the flow, they want to take it down to Water Street right now. So it won't be any more than it was previously. It may just change directions from going westward to Park Street, instead southward to Water Street.
Any other questions? It's good. Okay, we'll call the question, please.
On the matter before you, Councillor Deary, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Earl,
Yes.
Councillor Fullerton,
Yes.
Councillor Hobbs,
Yes.
Councillor Calabash.
Yes.
Councillor Laverne,
Yes.
Councillor Severson,
Yes.
Councillor Wales.
Yes.
Mayor Wren.
Yes,
That's carried, your worship.
thank you so much. We next have the Planning and Development Committee consent agenda, and we'll go to the chair of that committee, Councillor Calabash, please.
Thank you, your worship. I'll have Councillor Earl do the first one. Councillor Wales do the next two, and Councillor Laverne do the last two, but I'll start with the all matters listed under consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Should a council member wish an alternative action from the proposed recommendation, the council member shall request that this matter be removed. Is there any request for removal of any of the items? Okay, Councillor Earl, if you can do the first one, Councillor Wales the next two, and Councillor Laverne the last two. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Calabash. Plan of subdivision, west side of Windsor Drive at Centennial Road. So that the council for the corporation of the city of Brockville, acting pursuant to section 51 in bracket 6 of the Planning Act RSO 1990, grant final approval with respect to the plan of subdivision on the lands described as part of lot 13 concession to city of Brockville, being part of plots 32 to 34 on registered plan 28R-6530 in parts 1 to 3 and register plan 28R-12212.
And item 2, 2023-154, requested changes to the draft plan of subdivision for Windsor at Centennial Sterling Meadows. That council accept the changes to the draft plan of subdivision prepared by Stantec Geomatics Limited, project number 1616-14361-131, dated 26th of May, 2023, to the new draft plan of subdivision prepared by Stantec Geomatics Limited, project number 14361-131, dated July 28th, 2023, showing 9 streets and blocks 1 through 175 inclusive, said streets and blocks being delineated on the aforementioned draft plan, and that the owners request to name the streets within the plan of subdivision Booth Street, Briggs Terrace, Craig Crescent, Dobby Street, Fitzsimmons Drive, Jackson Circle, Moore Crescent, Potter Drive, and Rogers Crescent be endorsed. And 2023-149, final acceptance and discharge plan 28M-15 for the Hunters Hill subdivision and Wildwood Crescent Phase 3, that a bylaw be enacted for the final acceptance of the work under plan 28M-15 and to discharge obligations under subdivision agreement dated 21st of March 2019 between Spring Valley Homes Limited and the Corporation of the City of Brockville be adopted.
And to follow the 2023-152 final approval plan of subdivision Rockford Forest, that council for the corporation of the city of Brockville acting pursuant to section 51 bracket 6 of the Planning Act RSO 1990. Grant final approval with respect to the plan of subdivision of the lands described as part of lot 11, concession 2 being parts 1, 2, and 3. Plan 28R 15700, subject to an easement over part 2, plan 28R 15700, as in 38E 9163, City of Brockville being Alpin 44171-0655 LT, and that the name of the street with the plan of subdivision being Flanders Road be endorsed. And 2023-159 employment lands review, that staff report back with options for expanding the present CIP program to employment lands, and that council direct staff to proceed to hire engineers to provide a detailed plan for creating an industrial park in the Northwest employment lands with cost estimated for providing municipal service and other utilities to these land, and that this be funded by the Industrial Land Reserve.
Thank you all. One of the things about getting to sit up here is I don't have to read these complicated technical motions anymore. We'll call the roll, please.
Thank you, your worship. Councillor Deary, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Earl,
Yes. Excuse me, yes.
Councillor Fullerton,
Yes.
Councillor Hobbs,
Yes.
Councillor Calavas.
Yes.
Councillor Laverne,
Yes.
Councillor Severson,
Yes.
Councillor Wales,
Yes.
Mayor Ren.
Yes.
That's carried, your worship.
Thank you so much. All right, sorry, my screen just went in the wrong direction. So we have no new business, no unfinished business, and no emergency business. So I'll ask the city manager to read the bylaws, please.
Thank you, your worship. The bylaws before you this evening are bylaw 60-2023 to adopt amendment number 29 to the official plan as it relates to part of Park Lot 13, Plan 9 in the city of Brockville, at municipal address of 332 Park Street. Bylaw 61-2023 to amend City of Brockville zoning bylaw 050-2014 as it relates to part of Park Lot 13 and Plan 9 as it relates to 332 Park Street. Bylaw 62-2023 to adopt amendment number 30 to the official plan as it relates to part lot C, plan 146, at municipal address of 71 King Street East. And bylaw 63-2013 to amend City of Brockville zoning bylaw 050-2014 as it relates to part lot C, plan 146, municipal address of 71 King Street East. That concludes the reading of the bylaws, your worship.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. I'm going to ask Councillor Earl if he would move the reading of the bylaws. Councillor Fullerton, would you agree to second? Thank you, Councillor Earl.
Okey doke. Reading about, okay, that bylaws numbered 060-2023 to 063-2023 be introduced, and now the same now be read the first, second, and third time. Signed by the mayor and the clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation and be recorded.
Thank you, Councillor Earl. By show of hands, all in favor? And that is carried. I have no announcements tonight. We're going to be moving into closed session, so we will invite our representative of the media. If you have any questions, Mr. Zajac, we'll take them now.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple here. Looking for clarity on the in-house paratransit motion, which is now approved. There was that $35,000 item for 2023 for the transit coordinator. And the months are specified, I believe, last 2 or 3 months of the year. So is that a new hire that's going to carry on into future years, and that 35 grand is just to cover the salary this year? Or are we talking about a permanent, a temporary contract to ease the transition?
Well, to be up and running on January 1st to provide this service, we have to onboard the staff that are going to work in that service before January 1st. So the dollar values that are attached to the motion with respect to new staff will cover the 2023 employment costs, and those people, of course, will be recruited and stay on to work for the city of Brockville in 2024 and beyond, hopefully.
Okay, so there is a new position being created of transit coordinator?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all right. The other one, now this concerns the consent agenda and the Northwest Employment Lands. And apologies if I'm digging a little below the weeds for this, but reading the report, this kind of struck me here. Some of this is based on forecasts estimating that employment growth in the city of Brockville increase from what I see here is 12,427 jobs in 21 to 15,428 in 2046. So an increase of 3,001 jobs. I'm wondering, does it strike anyone here that, 3,001 jobs in the span of those decades seems like a rather slow pace of growth? And is there anything being considered as to why growth is projected to be that slow? Is it simply about demographics? Are there measures being contemplated or anything like that?
The Director of Economic Development could probably give you a much better answer than I can, but I think those numbers are coming from our official plan review, where you set some projections as to growth of employment and growth of residents and population, so that you can make sure you have enough lands designated to accommodate that growth. So that's where those numbers would be coming from. That's not to say that you couldn't, overachieve and shoot for the stars and do much better. And in fact, we had that feedback from citizens when we were approving the subdivision at 550 King West. They said, well, you're going to have more houses than the target. Well, the target is it's not a target. I guess it's a projection for planning purposes. And that doesn't mean that you're married to that projection. You may well exceed it.
And I guess the final question on the employment lens is, now that the hiring of a consulting engineer is policy, what's the expected timeline for that to happen and for the report to come back?
I'll ask the city manager.
It will go through an RFP process, so I would expect it's going to be close to maybe in December, but probably in January by the time the RFP is developed, let out, and then the proposals received.
I think the important thing, though, and the reason we're doing this, is that the current industrial park and the northeast quadrant of Brockville, we're sold out. The city does have, sporadic pieces of property here and there. Some of them are not all that large. And so we need to turn our heads to making sure we have serviced industrial land to meet our needs for the future. Okay. Thanks very much, Mr. Zajac. So we're going to be taking a motion to move into closed session, but maybe we could just give ourselves a 10-minute recess for whatever purposes you may need.
Could I just ask you to move that and then recess?
Okay. Sorry, folks, we do have to make the motion first. So could we ask Councillor Laverne, would you mind making the motion to move into closed session? Councillor Calvas, will you second that motion?
That pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, Section 239 sub 2B, council resolve itself closed session, closed to the public to consider personal matter about employee, individual, and including municipal or local board employees.
Thank you. And all in favor, show of hands. Thank you. We're going to go into closed session after our Councillor Laverne, if you would move the report of the closed session requires a seconder. Yes, Councillor Wales, would you second?
Yes.
That council rise from the closed session and the chairman report that all recommendation adopted in closed session be adopted
It's actually, I'm sorry, it's without reporting.
without reporting.
All right, all in favor by show of hands, that's carried. Councillor Laverne, you did such a great job. Could you please do the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Wales, will you second?
That bylaw number 059-220 2023 to confirm the proceeding of council at its meeting held on September 12, 2023 be read at first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be recorded.
All in favor? That is carried. Adjournment, please. Same mover, same seconder.
And that council adjourn is proceeding until the next regular meeting scheduled for September 26, 2023.
Thank you. Adjournment time 8:45. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you all. Have a good evening. See you next week.
You can come to the market before coming to the meeting or.
Why don't you bring the